My son goes around shooting the basketball saying, Isaiah Thomas.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Fantrax and Basketball Monster. And today's Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast is also brought to you by SeatGeek. Download the mobile app for the easiest way to buy tickets and use the promo code LOFantasy to get yourself $20 rebate on your first purchase. My name is Josh Lloyd, and as always, you can find me on Twitter at redrock_bball. We had a beautiful 8-game day in the NBA on Monday. We've got a beautiful 8-game day in the NBA coming up on Tuesday. So we've got lots to talk about, of course.
Let's get to it.
All right, let's get stuck straight into talking about all the action that we had across the NBA. And the best place to always kick that off is the monstrous line of the night, and it goes to none other than Jim Butler. Jim was pretty good, and he was more than pretty good, to be honest.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah, that's about accurate. 52 points for Jim, 12 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, 1 block, 15 of 24 from the field for Jim, and an absolutely monstrous 21 of 22 from the free throw line. He was enormous in this game, and the only thing ruining this performance from Jimmy Butler is listening to Stacey King announce the game and constantly drop ridiculous catchphrases in there. So that's the only thing that could have ruined this performance from Jim. He was immense. He is the number 13th ranked player this season, and he has been such a massive boon for the free throw percentage category. He was big in it last year, like huge. But we're talking about a guy that's almost tripled his impact in that category, and that's from going from 83% to 88%, but more importantly, going from 7.1 attempts at the line to 9.7. And that extra volume has such a huge impact in that category, and he is now a free throw anchor. He is a top 3 contributor in that category, along with Kawhi Leonard and Isaiah Thomas. It has been amazing. 25 points for this season for Jim, a 3 a game, 6.7 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 1.7 steals. And what we're going to see with Butler now that Rondo is done, he's done for the time being. I don't see there's any way that he is back starting with this team. Yeah, Butler's assist numbers are going to go back up. So at the moment, they're down on last season from 4.8 down to 4.4. But his last 4 games, he's up to 5.3. And we're going to see Jim hover above 5, I reckon, now for the rest of the season. We will see a bit of a bump in his assist rate now that Rondo is persona non grata in the Chicago lineup. Butler's also shooting 46% from the field, which is an improvement on last season there as well. Still just 33% from 3, but still giving you a 3 a game, putting up obviously great numbers. And to me, this is the Jim Butler that the Bulls deserve. This is the Jim Butler that the Bulls should have been looking to build around. None of this bring Rajon Rondo in bullshit. None of this bring Dwayne Wade in, though I completely understand the Wade situation from a marketing hometown free agency coup sort of a situation. But Jim Butler should be running everything. He should be the point guard. He should be LeBron James. He should be James Harden for this team. He should be the guy that is not a point guard, but is a point guard, that he just handles the ball all the time. It would be great to get another shooter in there at the guard position, and neither Michael Carter-Williams or Jaren Grant is that guy. But perhaps if Denzel Valentine didn't sprain his ankle, maybe he could have been that guy alongside Butler, which is what I was hoping for after the draft. Let's get Butler, let's get Valentine in there, 2 guys to handle the ball, 1 guy that can shoot and spot up off him as he starts to learn this stuff, get Dougie, get Niko Mirotic in there, and things would work out. Yes, it's 1 game without Wade and Rondo, but Butler was ridiculously good in that 1 game, and let's hope we don't get Rondo back from a Bulls fan point of view, from a fan of good basketball point of view, probably not from a fantasy point of view, because I know plenty of you drafted Rondo and love what he provides, but there's nothing for Rondo moving forward. There's no team that's trading for him to start. He has no standard league value whatsoever in any situation, in my opinion. I could very well be proved wrong, but I did call that this would happen, and I've been very much on the anti-Rondo bandwagon for a couple of seasons now. Sometimes the things that I predict do take a while to come true, but I think eventually we're realizing that he just does not have a place in this league in a significant role, and that is going to allow a significant Jim Butler explosion from now. So, ranked 13th at the moment, Jim, real chance to me that he finishes the season as a top 10 player with the events that have transpired in Chicago. So huge night from him, and we could be seeing probably not 52, 12, and 6s moving forward, but the 6 assists, 28, 7, and 6 could be a regular occurrence for Jim Butler. Let's just hope that he stays healthy, which has always been a concern for him. But really good numbers. So fantastic stuff if you happen to own Jim Butler. All right, it's time for me to tell you about today's sponsor, and that's SeatGeek. If you want to go and see Jimmy Butler in person, you live in the Chicago area, or you live in another NBA city and the Bulls are coming to town, you want to see Jim run things, head to SeatGeek. It's the smartest, it's the easiest way to find tickets for whatever game that you want to see, whether it is a Bulls game, whether you want to go see, and honestly, if there was teams that I wanted to go and see, if for some reason I was transported from Australia to America right now, I'd be looking to see Bulls games, but I'd also be wanting to see Bucks games and Nuggets games, so I can see my two favourite players outside from the Bulls in general. They're my favourite players regardless, Gianni and Nik Jokic, who have been fantastic. So if you want to get those and get these games and watch these players in person, go to SeatGeek. It's never been easier for you to get great value on these tickets. The best deals on any ticket in the house, SeatGeek has it for you, wherever you want to sit. Get the app on your phone. That's what I've done, and you can look up these tickets and you can find when you've got good prices. It's the easiest way. It's convenient. Just a few taps on the screen, and there you have it. You can get your tickets sorted straight away. SeatGeek always gives you the best deal on every ticket because SeatGeek price compares for you by searching multiple ticket sites. The prices vary depending on what site you go to, but SeatGeek takes all that hassle out and just shows you, here's everything, you pick the one you want to go to. And they also highlight where the value is. Green, that's a good value. Green for go. Red, bad value. Red for stop. We're taught that from the age of about 3, and it continues through to the SeatGeek app. Every ticket you buy on SeatGeek is backed by their 100% guarantee. And the best part about it, not the fact that you get these tickets and you get them cheap and you get them 100% guaranteed. The best part is that listeners to this podcast get a $20 rebate off your first SeatGeek purchase. Plenty of listeners have used this code and have made very good use of that extra $20. So to get your $20 rebate on tickets, download the SeatGeek app. That's step 1. That's free. Costs you nothing. Go to the settings tab, click add a promo code. Also free. Enter the promo code, which is LOFantasy. You know what? Free. And then, when you do decide to make a purchase, SeatGeek will send you $20 off your first purchase. Very straightforward. Download the SeatGeek app, enter the promo code LOFantasy today. Let's go waiver wire line of the nighting now. Jode Meeks. Big game from Jody with Evan Fournier out again. 23 points for Meeksy, 6 triples, 2 boards, 2 assists, a block on really efficient 7 of 9 shooting. Now Meeksy, when we look at his numbers, I think you'd be surprised to see that over the last week, he's a top 60 player. He's barely outside the top 100 over the last 2 weeks. And these are games that he's playing 25 minutes a night. Because he's doing it with 2.5 threes a game, 12 points a game, and a steal, but shooting 47 from the field and 100% from the line. Now, if we know anything about Jody Meeks, we know that he's probably not going to continue to shoot at that percentage. He's a 42% shooter this season, and he's at 47% over the last 2 weeks. So there's obviously a pretty significant discrepancy there. So there's something to drop there. But whilst Evan Fournier is out, he's going to hit threes. He's going to score, and he's going to hit threes. This is just what Jody Meeks does. If you can remember his time back with the D'Antoni Lakers, this is what he does. He puts up stats, and he can be a useful player. Man, he was a top 60 player back in that time with the Lakers, which is just amazing to say. He's only a short-term value type of guy here while Fournier remains out, and Fournier might not miss any time. But you're looking for a short-term surge in some threes at good efficiency with a good free throw percentage and some scoring. Jody Meeks is around, and he's comfortably just going to continue shooting. We can obviously tell that about him, but in terms of long-term value, I think Meeks is a bloke that you should be looking at maybe in 16-team leagues when everything settles back down. But I can see him in a 20-minute a night role each night once the Magic get healthy again. The young gun of the night, Nikola Jokic. Yeah, he's pretty good. I won't use the drop again because I've used it once this show, but he is pretty good. 21, 13, and 5 for Jokic. 1 3, 1 steal, 8 of 17 from the field, and 4 of 4 from the line. And what is becoming a pretty familiar refrain for me is that he got into foul trouble. He was in somewhat of a tough matchup. We know what happens to big men or centers against the Warriors. They get limited. Well, Jokic had 2 fouls in the first 7 or so minutes. Didn't get another foul for the rest of the night, but then only played the 25 as Malone had to find ways to try and stop the Warriors' offense. But in 25 minutes, 21, 13, and 5 is ludicrously good. His last 4 games, Jokic, He had 24, 10 and 4 with 3 steals, 16, 8 and 11 with a block, 25, 7 and 4, and 21, 13 and 5 in the last 4 games. The last 2 of those games, he's played 22 and 25 minutes. So in his last 47 minutes on court, he has scored 46 points with 20 rebounds and 9 assists. He's ridiculous. He just needs to stay out of foul trouble somehow. And it is hard for him at this point. He reaches in a lot. He commits dumb fouls. But man, keep him on the court 35 minutes a game. We're talking about a top 15 guy. In fact, over the last 2 weeks, in just 25 and a half minutes, he's inside the top 30. In 25 and a half minutes, you get him to play 30 minutes. That's comfortably in that range. In the per 36 ranks over the last 2 weeks, he's 11th. Averaging 24 and 12 with 7 assists, a steal, a block on 59 and 74%. Really, I don't know what more I can say about Nik Jokic. He is a top 10 passer in the NBA. Not in the non-point guard division, in the entire NBA. He is a top 10 passer. His passing is... I tweeted this out the other day. There was an article on Denver Stiffs about his top 10 passes in the last 7 days. And legit, it could be one of those things that the NBA puts out at the end of the year saying, here's your top 10 passes for the season. Half-court lobs to guys, behind the back, no look, that sling rocket pass that he sent to Fareed the other day, half-court behind the back dribbles, double-teamed to a guy streaming down the field. Just ridiculous stuff that Jokic is able to do, and watching him is so fun, and we just hope that he can stay on the court. He has got potential that is through the roof. You know what I feel about him. He's a special player, and yeah, now he's starting to put it all together for fantasy. So fantastic stuff from Nik Jokic to be the young gun of the night yet again. The dud of the night, Enes Kanter. Man, what happened? One thing that we've always had an issue with Kanter is what are his minutes going to be like? That wasn't the problem today. He played minutes. He got 22 minutes, scored 2 points, had 5 boards, had an assist on 1 of 6 shooting. Now, he hasn't had less than 10 shots in a game in his last 7 outings, and the last time he did get less than 6 shots in a game was a game that he played 15 minutes. The game before that he played had less than 10 shots was a game he played 14 minutes. So just a really weird situation where he just wasn't a part of anything, took no free throws when he had 19 combined in his last 2 games. His rebounding was down, and nothing else is really a surprise, but only 6 shots and only hitting 1 of them is very un-Enes Kanter-y. I don't think we should be overly concerned about him. I don't really 100% think he's a must-own 10-team league guy. In an 8-team league, I would say no. A 10-teamer, he's debatable. Yeah, he's averaging in the last 2 weeks 17 and 7, which is obviously awesome, and 13.5 and 6 for the year. But it's just no contributions in other areas. And at the moment, his free throws are actually a negative, when normally they're a significant positive. But he's only at 71% over the last 2 weeks on 5 attempts, and that's a big negative. So he's a debatable one. I still would be holding him if I owned him, because obviously you drafted him knowing that you're going to get field goal percentage, hopefully free throw percentage, points and rebounds, and that's what you're going to get from Kanter. So he is still providing those numbers, but not quite to the same level that we hoped. The rebounding numbers are actually significantly down this season as well. Last year he was at 13.9 per 36. This year is at 10.5. So the rebounding has dipped, with I guess because Serge Ibaka's not there, who is not a prolific rebounder. So we're sharing the court with other guys who are potentially better rebounders than what Serge is, like Domantas Sabonis and Andre Robertson, for example, as well, who's a really good rebounder for his size. So Kanter is suffering in that regard, but I still would be holding on to him in 12-team formats. All right, let's get into these 8 games now. Let's start talking about them in a bit of extra detail. Bring that up on the screen for you guys watching. There we go. The first game we take a look at is Enes Kanter, and that is... Well, not Enes Kanter, it's Enes Kanter's team. We've got Steve Adams, who had 20 points with 8 rebounds, a steal, and 3 blocks, 9 of 11 from the field. Really good performance from Adams. He started off absolutely on fire in this game. Really good stuff, but he hasn't quite been at the same level that I guess we hoped he would get to, and that's mainly because that his block numbers weren't quite at the same spot, or not quite at the same spot. That they're not, I guess, at elite center type numbers. He only is at less than a block a game, And for a centre, we hoped he was out, especially in the playoffs, he did take his block numbers up, but that was always a risk. He's not a big shot blocker. But what he has done is obviously up his other numbers, and he has upped his free throws, although over the last 2 weeks, his free throw percentage has been regressing down to a situation where maybe he's a punt guy again. And that's happened to a few big men, like Rudy Gobert for one, who started off the season shooting them really well and recently has started to regress. We saw that happen with Hassan Whiteside over the course of the whole season after sort of resurrecting his free throws last year, dropping right off. So it seems to be a somewhat common occurrence, I guess, is the best way of putting it, that these big men might improve short term and then can drop off. So it is something to keep an eye on. Vic Oladipo was fantastic, 18, 5 and 4 with 4 triples and a steal in his second game back. Let's hope this sort of form continues. While Russ went 30 points, 7, 6 and 3 with 2 triples. Not the greatest shooting night, and I say that probably a little tongue-in-cheek because 9 of 28 is horrible. He did have 10 of 11 from the field, so some decent numbers there, but otherwise not great stuff in that field goal percentage. But you're aware of that. You know that that's an issue with Russ. Andre Robertson, 19 minutes only for Robertson, 0 points and 4 rebounds. Any illusion of him being a standard league guy, I think, has evaporated. And Samaj Kristen had one of his best games of the season. In fact, it was a career-high 11 points in 12 games, but with Cam Payne making his D-League debut tomorrow, or today, depending on when you listen to this, Samaj's role in this team is going to evaporate pretty quickly, and he could find himself back with the OKC Blue as early as next week, I think, after Payne has a few games down there and eases himself back in. We're not going to see a huge amount of Samaj Kristen. Alex Abrines, 14 minutes for Abrines, 6 points with 2 triples, just continuing to do that ahead of Anthony Morrow, who was a DNP CD, and that's, I think, the way it's going to remain. Abrines is just a short-term, well, not a short-term, he's a flyer-type 3-point specialist. For the Bucks, Yanni, 41 minutes for Yanni, 26, 10 and 5 in a 4-point victory for the Bucks. He had a 1-1 there as well, while Jabari went 19, 6 and 2 with 2 triples and a block. A lot of shots for Jabari. He went 7 of 17. Yanni went 10 of 19. So big games from their big guys. But I think it's important here for us to look at what happened with the centers, because Johnny Henson got some minutes back. 27 minutes for John, 12 and 5 with a steal and a block. Now, he had been completely irrelevant for a very long time. He'd been getting very minimal minutes, and this is a step in the right direction. Do I buy it? Do I buy it as someone that is a must-own? No, not at all. It's Jason Kidd, so occasionally this sort of shit goes on. And this was a game where Kidd went weird and matched up Henson and Monroe on the court together, which barely ever happens ever. So not really sure we can put a huge amount of faith in that continuing to happen. I would much rather have Monroe than Henson, who played 27 minutes and went 15, 7 and 2 with a steal and a block on 7 of 10 shooting, but it was a good night from Henson as well. Brogo started in place of Daly again. Not a good shooting night from Brogo, 3 of 12, but still had 12, 2 and 5, hit a triple and hit all 5 of his free throws. Got to own him in all leagues at this point until we see how this Dellavedova situation plays itself out. But as I've mentioned before, even if he goes back to the bench, I can totally see him playing the majority of the point guard minutes in a 23-27 split or something along those lines, and that could make him 12-team value. He's been too good to take out of a role and has been the best drafted player this season. I think that's... Is there anyone else? There's not, is there? He has been the best drafted player this season. Until we see Simmons, of course, to see how he can go. Tony Snell, 0 points in 31 minutes. Almost classifies as a good night for Tony Snell. Let's get on to the next one, and that is the New Orleans Pelicans and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Drew Holiday, just the 11 points on 11 shots, 4 rebounds, 13 assists, 3 steals, and 2 triples. Yeah, good night there, but weirdly, Drew just can't seem to hit free throws this season. I do believe that it will get better, but it has been a really weird occurrence so far. Tony Davis had 20 and 17 with 3 blocks. Well, Bud Hield. Now, the name Bud Hield is coming up a lot to me on message boards, in Twitter questions, in posts, wherever it is, about do we add Bud? Well, he had 20 points here. That's really good. 4 triples is also good. 5 rebounds, 2 assists. Yeah, solid. Good night, good percentages from Bud, and he played 35 minutes. So these are all things that are positive. I don't believe that he is a must-own player. To me, he is a better Jody Meeks, perhaps, or maybe not even a better Jody Meeks. He's a points and threes type streamer who is not guaranteed to have a 34-minute role each night and won't likely have good efficiency every night or most nights. And he does look better. I'll grant you that. He looks much better, but it's still not locking him into 30-plus a night, putting up consistent numbers. So to me, he is not a must-own player. you've got a spot and you want to take a crack and you think that he can get there, sure, but I think his ceiling is probably not even top 100. So even if he gets there and keeps a 34-minute role, how big an upside is he actually giving you? I don't think it's that high because it is just going to be points and threes from Bud. Terrence Jones down to 18 minutes, and when Donatas Motiejunas is signing, likely coming maybe by the time you've listened to this podcast, but probably in the next 24 to 48 hours, Jones's value is going to continue to tumble. There's no reason that he should be owned in 12-team leagues at this point anyway. He's just not in the rotation. He is, but he's not a main part of the rotation. He's not a big enough part of the rotation to be a standard league guy. So no reason for Terrence Jones to be held on to. Dante Cunningham's taken his role, 6 and 5 for Cunningham in 33 minutes, but that doesn't mean he is an ownable type player either. Well, Tyreek Evans wasn't as good as what he has. Wasn't as good as what he has been in the other games. 4, 3, and 5 in 19 minutes. But still, I still think you want to own Tyreek in all 12 and 10 team leagues. Onto the Cavs, LeBron 26, 7 and 6 with 2 steals and a block. 9 of 21 from the field for LeBron, 8 of 10 from the line, and he is sick. There are a few players on the Cavs who are sick. Channing Frye, there's a lot of players across the NBA that are sick. A few Boston Celtics players have been in hospital with illness. LeBron is sick, but he obviously motored through it for just the casual 39 minutes in a 90-82 victory. There's a potential, I guess, that he misses on Wednesday, but I don't really think that'll be too much to worry about. Now, Kevin Love did miss time. He played only 24 minutes in this one because he had food poisoning, allegedly. Conveniently, it comes 2 days after New Year's Eve. Apparently ate a bad sea bass, which is what they call it now, on the plane on the way back from Charlotte, and caused him to lose 10 pounds in 2 days. So, maybe I should get me some of that sea bass. Love still had a double-double in 24 minutes, 12 and 11 with 3 assists, but 5 of 19 shooting is putrid. So he could have had an absolute monster. He could have had like a 20 and 12 game or 20 and 11 game in 24 minutes. But the shooting, unfortunately, wasn't quite there for him. Channing Frye bounced back with 4 triples in 25 minutes for 14 points. He's cooled off as being that guy who's a 3-point streaming player, which he he was at one point, but he's not quite the same as he was earlier in the season. I suppose the family issues that he's having have impacted his play to a degree. Geordie McRae made another start, played just 16 minutes, 4 and 3 for 2 steals, while DeAndre Liggins got just 19 in his start. He had 3 steals with 2 points, and he is a much worse Tony Allen, a steals specialist, and that's really it. But Kay Felder has really shown out the last 2 games. 12 points here in 22 minutes. 2 assists. It's important because obviously the Cavs have no backup point guard. Geordie McRae's not a point guard. DeAndre Liggins isn't a point guard. Iman Shumpert's not a point guard. And Felder, who was bad at the start of the year, has looked really good in the 2 games since coming back from the D-League. So that can be... it's going to be interesting, I guess, to see what they do with him in the rotation moving forward. But if he proves himself valuable enough, then maybe there'll be a couple of minutes for him moving forward. But he's been better than he was, obviously, to start the year. Iman Shumpert in 31 minutes was pretty useless, 3 and 4 with a steal and a block. Really hard to consider him a must-own player, and by really hard, I mean you shouldn't do it. The next one is Utah and Brooklyn. Gordie Hayward. Actually, no, let's recap. The Jazz were down in this one for chunks of the game, but ended up getting a pretty comfortable victory over the Nets. George Hill was out, but we did have the season debut of Alec Burks. We'll start with him. He played 3 minutes. He took 1 shot and missed it and did nothing else. Cool. There's no reason to own Alec Burks in 12s, in 14s, maybe 16 team, maybe. But even then, it's a long way back for him. And even when he comes back, like when he is fully ready, what's he going to play? 19 a night? 22 a night? Is he going to kick Joe Ingles out of the rotation? I don't think so. Ingles has been fantastic. Is he going to cut Rod Hood out of the rotation? No. Is he going to cut Joey Johnson out of the rotation? Well, that probably doesn't matter because he's playing a different position. But I can't really see enough minutes for Alec Burks moving forward for being a guy that's really going to have any sort... Even in 30 minutes a night, he was a borderline standard league type player. I just can't see it for Burks, so no stashability there with him. Rod Hood took 19 shots, obviously getting his shot off. Only hit 6 of them. Had 15 points with 3 rebounds and an assist. I still believe that Rod Hood is a guy that you want to own in 12-teamers. while Shelvin Mack went 15, 2 and 2, had 3 steals in 32 minutes, replacing Georgie Hill. We know that he has that short-term value while Hill is out. We don't know how long Hill will be out, whether he'll be out at all. The Jazz do have 4 more games this week. So maybe you could look to stream him in for Tuesday if we find out that Hill is out, but we just don't know that at this point. Joey Ingles had a 111 as well, and 5 points and 9 boards, just consistently giving that mid-sized league value, which is, I guess, somewhat of a surprise. Derek Favors was bad, 18 minutes for Favors, 6 and 3, and didn't start the second half. Boris Diaw did. He came back in, though, in the second half, and there's a couple of things. Either he's just not right at all, which that's pretty obvious, and they are limiting him with the 5 games and 2 back-to-backs this week. I think that we probably look to the second part of that and say that they've got 5 games, it's a back-to-back, and they are trying to ease him in. But you're in 8th spot, 9th spot. Might be really tough to hold on to Favors. I still would do it for a bit. I just want to see how he looks for the rest of this week. But if you're still just playing these 23, 20... Remember, this is like 6 minutes less than what he played the other game. So no need to panic too much. But he did look horrible. That's the thing that worries me. If you're up the top of the standings, of course, you hold him and you end up being pretty happy, I think, with some numbers coming back. But it's been such a long way back for an injury which... It didn't seem all that severe at first, so there is definitely some worry factor there with Derek Favors. Onto the Nets, Trevor Booker revenge gamed them, 17 and 15 for Booker, 2 assists and a block, really went off early on, had been pretty poor really over the last couple of weeks and taken himself right out of 10-team league consideration. I still believe that he's not a 10-team leaguer, but if you look at Booker in a 12-teamer, he's a borderline, but even then, I reckon you can probably do better in a lot of situations. Brookie Lopez went 14 and 6 and added a pair of steals and blocks, while Isaiah Whitehead played 31 minutes, had 12 points, 6 rebounds, and actually blocked Rudy Gobert. But do we get excited about that? No, because the majority of the games that he's been starting, which has been 19 this season, I believe he's played over 30 minutes in 2 of them. So it's a very rare occasion where he actually gets minutes enough to be useful. Sure, in a 16-team league, you look at Isaiah Whitehead, but a starting point guard playing 31 minutes who gets 1 assist, not sure there's a ton of value there, considering he just doesn't get 30 minutes on the majority of nights. Shawnee Kilpatrick struggled, 8 and 4 in 28 minutes. That's 2 struggled games in a row for Sean. I still do think you want to own him, while Bojan Bogdanovic had 8 and 3 in 25, and he is not an ownable player in standard leagues, in my opinion. Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, only 14 minutes, really disappointing there. 11, 1 and 1, so still actually got some decent numbers, but at this point he's not a 12-team league guy. Unfortunately, the Orlando Magic, the New York Knicks, the Magic get the big victory on the road, 115 over 103 without Evan Fournier. Lord Alfred Payton played 31 off the bench. Now, Frank Vogel apparently gave this team a rocket, really lit into them and threatened there was going to be lineup changes. There wasn't, but what there was a rotational change. And this is something that I can get behind. Lord Alfred played 31 minutes, 13, 3 and 14 with a 111. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It doesn't matter if he starts, he needs to be owned. And if he's going to get instead of 28 minutes a night, he gets 31 minutes a night, obviously that's beneficial to his fantasy value. So look towards that. But the bigger impact thing to me is the fact that Nick Vucevic played 31 and Bismack Biyombo played 19. Now, Biyombo did have some foul trouble, but his minutes have been consistently trending down, playing like 22, 23 a night over the last few, down to 19 today. Bismack went scoreless, had 0 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. So he got it done with those defensive numbers, but I don't believe that he is a 12-team league guy. And amazingly, when you play your best players, and you play your best players the most minutes, good things tend to happen. And Nick Vucevic is the best player. He's the best big man on this team. He's the best center on this team. He's comfortably better than Bismack Biyombo. 14, 13, and 5 with 2 steals for Vucevic in 31 minutes. And I know that Vucevic is not a good defender and Biyombo is, but Biyombo is a worse offensive player than what Vucevic is, significantly worse in that area. So that's why I give Vucevic the nod. Hopefully this is a nice little boost to his production. 22 and 6 for Serge Ibaka, but no other numbers there. Well, Aaron Gordon had a really good one. 22, 6 and 6, a steal and 3 triples. And this gives us an idea of what he can do, of the ceiling for Aaron Gordon. But unfortunately, we just don't see it often enough. I'll go back to it again. There's probably no one on your waiver wire with higher potential or higher upside than Aaron Gordon, and that makes him worth owning. but it depends, I guess, on who you drop, and if you can then suffer through a 2-pointer in the next game, or a 4-pointer, or 6 points on 12 shots, or one of those other bullshit sort of performances that he turns in. But he is trending up. The numbers have been more consistent recently, and that is obviously a step forward. Jeffy Green had 10 points in 27 minutes here as well. For the Knicks, Melo back, or didn't miss a game, but missed the second half of that last one with his knee problem. 19, 7 and 3 with 3 steals and a block. Kristaps, he was out of this one with his sore Achilles, so he will be back Wednesday, so there's not too much to panic about there, thankfully. Joakim Noah played 33 minutes. Working out what minutes Noah's going to get tends to be an exercise in futility, but it appears now that he's going to be getting 25 plus a night. 8 and 10, 2 steals, 2 blocks. Makes Noah ownable. For certain teams, not for every team, but it does make him ownable. There's a Derrick Rose special here, 18, 3 and 4, no steals, no threes. That's pretty stock standard, but he did have 8 of 15 from the line, and he has been better this season as long as you're aware of his limitations. Courtney Lee returned 14 and 3 in 34 minutes. For Lee, he just remains that 14-team league guy, and that really limited what Justin Holiday could do. Back to 14 minutes because they started Lance Thomas, who is really, really horrible. 10 points in 20 minutes for Thomas, while Justin Holiday had 5 and 4 in his 14. Kylo Quinn played 17 and went 0 and 9 with 2 blocks, while Billy Hernan Gomez had 4 and 3 in 16 minutes. They still got some run, those guys, with Porzingis out, but nothing too exciting. Brando Jennings had 12, 3 and 4 in his 24 minutes, so just some more assists, just adding on to his value. Next up, we'll talk about the Charlotte Hornets and the Chicago Bulls. Kemba Walker, 34, 11 and 4, 6 triples, a steal and a block, and ridiculous 13 of 19 from the field. Huge numbers from Kemba, while Nick Batum went 19, 6 and 5. The Hornets were without Cody Zeller in this game. It was a loss, 118 to 111. Roy Hibbert got the start. He played just the 22 minutes and had 6 points and no rebounds. So I don't care that Zeller is out and he could miss a few more games with a concussion. There is no reason to add Hibbert outside of 16-team leagues. He's just not capable of playing big minutes. The extra minutes go to Spencer Hawes, who played 26 here, 10, 3 and 2 with a couple of blocks, and that vaults him into short-term usability in maybe 14-team leagues. Jeremy Lamb really taking on his role with Marco Bellinelli out. 27 minutes for Lammy, 15, 6 and 3 with a 3 and a steal. Really good numbers. Not good enough for me to add, but absolutely he is streamable while Bellinelli remains out, while Mike Kidd-Gilchrist, only the 27 minutes here, 6, 3 and 3, only has value in standards while Bally is out as well. Let's move on to the Bulls. Michael Carter-Williams played 31 minutes. The shooting was horrible. 4 of 12 from the field. But 10, 9, 3 with a block. Hit both his free throws. They're still good numbers. I still think that he is a guy to look at in 12-team leagues. Now, Jaren Grant played minutes alongside Carter-Williams, and he played obviously behind Carter-Williams. 27 minutes for Jaren, just the 9 points, but had 3 rebounds, 6 assists, and 4 steals. Now, the 6 assists for Grant are a season high. The 4 steals, we've seen him have big steal numbers already in that start against Portland, so he can get after it defensively. I don't really think that he is a guy to swoop on in 12-teamers, and if I had to choose, and I have in many situations, that Carter-Williams is the guy that I'll grab. But in deeper leagues, you should be looking at Grant now and saying, well, he is the backup, he is the number 2 point guard, and he could be in line for between 18 to 25 minutes a night. And with the injury now to Denzel Valentine, some extra minutes potentially do open up for him, but he is going to struggle with shooting too. Nick Mirotic had a Richie Beno today, which is the 2 triples, 2 steals, and 2 blocks in 28 minutes. Good to see his minutes back up there. Really do think that he's got great upside. You know I've said this plenty of times, and he is okay in 12ers. While Denzel Valentine, in his 18 minutes, had 3 triples for 9 points and actually looked pretty good out there. 9 points, 3 triples, 3 assists, and a steal. Some good numbers, and he is a very fantasy-friendly player if he could just stay on the court. Taj Gibson and Robin Lopez both struggled, 6 and 7 for Taj, while 5 and 5 for Rob. While Dougie McDermott, this highlights the Doug McDermott issue. He played 30 minutes in place of Dwayne Wade, had 11 points. 1 rebound, 1 assist, did nothing else. He has no fantasy value. Even if he were to start long term and play 30 a night, there is no reason that he would ever be a 12-team league guy. And to be honest, he's pushing 14-team league value. He just does nothing in any area apart from score, and he doesn't even do that in high enough volumes. So he's just an absolute spud in terms of his fantasy output. Let's get on to the next game now. It is the Washington Wizards And the Houston Rockets, Brad Beal was back 27, 3 and 2 with 5 triples and 2 steals, 9 of 18 from the field for Bealey, while Johnny Wall went 18, 5 and 12 with 2 steals. Good numbers from their backcourt as per usual, and that they're carrying this team. We know that much. And Gortat another 40 minutes. He's going to play as many minutes as Scott Brooks wants him to until something falls apart. So there is a risk there with him. He is playing so many minutes. 13, 14 and 3 for Gortat. But he could maintain this value for a couple of months now because who knows when he is coming back. Markieff Morris, 12, 8 and 3 in 33 minutes. Well, Otto Porter, not a great Otto Porter night. Took the 12 shots, which is great. Only hit 4 of them, which has sort of been against what he's been doing all year. 8, 3 and 1, a steal and a block. So it was the rebounding that was down, and obviously the shooting, which was an issue. Trey Burke went from fantastic to terrible, and actually went back from fantastic to Trey Burke. 2 points in 11 minutes, had 2 assists, and this is the Trey Burke that we have come to know and love over the course of his career. And Kelly Oubre had 0 points in his 23 minutes. Onto the Rockets, a little bit of a sluggish performance, but they got the victory by 10 in the end. Jimmy Harden had his 3rd consecutive triple-double, 23, 10 and 10 with 3 steals, while Eric Gordon hit more than 5 threes in a game for the 9th time this season. Thank you to Matt Smith for that bit of research. 36 minutes for Gordon, 31 points, 6 triples, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, and a block, and did it on 11 of 18 shooting. He has been fantastic this year. There was no Pat Bev, so we had Corey Brewer starting. Doesn't matter that he starts. 4 points in 16 minutes for Brewer, and they just went with their best 5 players. James Harden, Trevor Ariza, Eric Gordon, Ryan Anderson, and the table, Montrezl Harrell. Harrell has to be owned in all leagues, 14 and 9 with 2 blocks, while Ryan Anderson had 8 and 4 with 2 triples, and actually thrilled you, I guess, with 2 assists, a steal, and a block, which is very out of character for him. So some good numbers yet again from the Houston Rockets, which is a pretty common occurrence for them, I guess. The Phoenix Suns and Los Angeles Clippers. Tony Warren Jr., 41 minutes, 24 points, 8 rebounds, 1 steal, 1 block, 12 of 20 shooting. This is why you own him. This is why you don't drop him. This is why you grab him. So if he's on your waiver wire, please own him. The amount of questions I've gotten over the last 2 weeks, TJ Warren's my worst player. No, he's not your worst player. He's not your worst player. He's struggled a couple of games, but he's not your worst player. He's probably your 7th best player, your 8th best player, but he's not your worst player. And I couldn't have been more adamant that he has to be owned. I held him all through his whatever the hell was going on with his head. People still hold on to Monte Ellis, but they're loath to hold on to TJ Warren. They hold on to Terrence Jones. You've got to own TJ Warren. It's as simple as that. PJ Tucker played a lot of minutes. They played a lot next to each other in this game, with the Clippers going small. That limited Marquise Chris to 12 minutes and Dragon Bender to just 5 minutes.
Bite my shiny metal ass.
You should do that, Earl Watson. Tucker played 36 minutes, 6 and 12 with a couple of steals. Really, no need for us to care too much about that outside of the deeper leagues. While Eric Bledsoe went 22, 8 and 9 with 3 steals. He was horribly inefficient, 8 of 28. He's not alone on this team, though. Devin Booker was inefficient again. They both shot 29% from the field. Bledsoe did it in exactly half the attempts, 4 of 14, had 13 points, 2 assists, and 2 steals, and he is really just a punt field goal percentage guy at this point. His volume and his percentage is just so poor that they are really impacting that category in a pretty significantly negative way. Tyson Chandler played 23 minutes, 12 and 6 for him, while Alex Len went 10 and 7 in 20 minutes. They are basically just splitting the value down the middle, and that keeps them out of really standard league consideration. Jared Dudley returned to the rotation here and had 0 points in 5 minutes, while Brandon Knight, for the 3rd consecutive game, played minutes in the single digits, 7 minutes for 5 points with 3 assists. No reason to hold on to Brandon. Look, Brandon Knight's owned in more leagues than TJ Warren, which is completely arse backwards. It needs to be the other way around. On to the Clippers, no Chrissy Paul. So the Clippers started Ray Felton, JJ Redick, Austin Rivers, and Luke Marmute with DeAndre Jordan at the 4. Felton was great, 37 minutes, 16, 4 and 5 with a steal and 2 blocks. And Doc said he wants Chris Paul to be 100% before he comes back. So we might see this for a couple more games, meaning Rivers and Felton can have some short-term value. Rivers wasn't awesome. 9 points on 2 of 11 shooting. That's obviously shithouse. 4 rebounds and 5 assists. So, yeah, some nice numbers there, and you can rack up those numbers. So both guys, if we assume that Paul will continue to miss time, can be used this week. They moved on from Paul Pierce in the starting lineup, and this is something that just shits me to tears about coaches who do shit that everyone sees that is absolutely obvious. You can't start Paul Pierce stock. You can't play Paul Pierce stock. Nah, watch this. It's like he's going, no, Doc, you've made some of the dumbest decisions everywhere. Doc Rivers, hold my beer. Here's Paul Pierce playing 20 minutes. Doc, doesn't work. Nah, you're right, doesn't work. A month later, what about if I just start Paul? Doc, doesn't work. Leave it to me. It doesn't work, Doc. Stop starting Paul Pierce. He's a legend, but he's finished. He's cooked. He is washed up. He is done. Don't start him. When you've got other guys there, Brandon Bass, Wes Johnson, go small with Marmute there. Don't start Paul Pierce. It is bullshit. It's not a holding place. It's not a bookmark. It's nothing. It's useless. Anyway, Brandon Bass had 10 points in his 14 minutes. And Marmute had 13 in his 23. DeAndre Jordan pulled down 20 boards in this one as well. Apologies for the sneeze there. Let's go on to the Denver Nuggets and the Golden State Warriors, the last game of the night. Wilson Chandler was huge. 37 minutes for Chandler, 21, 4 and 2, but added the 3 triples, 2 steals, and a block for some nice numbers. And with Ken Fareed out, Yusuf Nurkic took his rightful role as the backup center on this team. 21 minutes for Nurk, 15, 6 and 4, a steal and a block. Now, before everyone gets their Nurkic boners going, he did get some extra run because Jokic was in foul trouble and because Fareed was out. Now, I don't know what Michael Malone will do. Michael Malone should play Yusuf Nurkic as the backup 5. That's what he should do. But as we have seen time and time again, what you should do and what Michael Malone do, the Venn diagram, they're like headlights. They're just two circles that are apart from each other. So not grabbing Nurkic in 12s. I think that you could see him settle into a 16-minute-a-night role maybe as a backup center. He's looked good these last 2 nights that he's played, but it all depends on what they do with Fareed and what they decide to do with Nurkic, I guess. But a really good performance, and he was really good in this game. So hopefully it gives Malone food for thought and thinks Fareed is the guy that shouldn't be in the rotation. The Rooster had 19, 8 and 4, a solid night there, while Fart and Will Barton went 14, 7 and 4 with 2 triples in 27 minutes. This 27-minute role is probably going to stick for Barton, I reckon. There'll be some nights where he plays 20, there'll be some nights where he plays 30. But he's going to be in between, and it doesn't make him a real hard 10-team league guy. You can still find a spot for him in 12s, but it's not going to be for everyone. Gaz Harris went 11, 4 and 3. Not a great shooting night for him, and the same goes for Manny Mudiay, who went 8, 2 and 4 in his 31 minutes. For the Warriors, it's more of the same. Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant all scored over 20, while Draymond had a 15, 10, 13 triple-double. But it was the bi-weekly Ian Clark explosion. 12 points in 16 minutes for Clarkie on 4 of 5 shooting. Normally he saves this sort of shit for the games against Portland. But here we are with him doing it against Denver. Really nothing else to see for the Warriors. Not much else happens on this team outside from the big names. And that's the way that it's pretty much going to stay for the remainder of the season. All right, we are done for the review of Monday's action. I'm going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be back to preview the 8 games that we've got happening on Tuesday.
Now I had a dream of you on that cold September night. I had nothing left to look forward to. I thought you were all I wanted, but I never really knew just what you could do. Never want to leave you, 'cause I think it's worth to be alone. Times like this I wonder.
Alright guys, we're back. Let's talk perfect lineups in the NBA for Monday. On FanDuel, we've got Kemba Walker at 56.2 and Eric Bledsoe at 47.1. The shooting guards, Yanni at 48.5 and Jamal Crawford at 32.9. Small forward Aaron Gordon, 38.2 and Jim Butler just was the casual 81.4. Trevor Booker at 39, Nick Jokic at 44 and Steve Adams at 40.6 for a total of 428 points and a salary of $59,600 on DraftKings. Lord Alfred Payton 43.75, Jim Butler at 85, TJ Warren at 40, Aaron Gordon at 41, Steve Adams at 41, Kemba Walker at 61.75, Trevor Booker at 42.25, and Eric Bledsoe at 50 for a total of 404.75 points, and that lineup used the total $50,000 in salary. There are 8 games on, so let's get stuck straight into those now. The first one is Minnesota and Philadelphia. The Timberwolves are favoured by 4, and the total is 203.5 points here for the Sixers. Sergio Rodriguez, Spanish Chocolate, and Richaun Holmes are both doubtful with an ankle sprain and concussion respectively, and Gerald Henderson likely returns to the lineup after missing a couple of games with a hip problem. Let's start with the point guards. It's all about TJ McConnell here. His price has risen by $800 over on FanDuel, so it is a bit of a rise, and he's up to 4,300 on DraftKings, but still in that role, he put up 30 points in the first game, so 4,600 pretty much covers it. The Timberwolves, not a really big, not a huge negative, I guess. Actually, they're not negative; they're a positive in terms of playing against the point guards. So, I think that he's basically a must-play in all sort of cash games, and even in tournaments. I think he's worth looking at in all those situations. One of the best low-price point guards that's out there on the entire slate. As for Rick Rubio, who's at 5,900, has been a little bit disappointing with some of his recent performances. At 14 points just in the last one, probably a little bit risky to go back to here. Although the matchup against Philadelphia does work in his favour, so you could have a look at him in a GPP scenario. Shooting guards, not much to love with the Philadelphia side of things. Sauce Castillo back in a bench role, and Gerald Henderson, they're not going to really trouble the scorers too much. Hollis Thompson, the same. And Zachary Levine's at 6,500 over on FanDuel, which is probably just a little bit too high. At 6,600 on DraftKings, I'd say the same thing. They just don't feel like I'm going to be able to get enough value. Now, he could always go off, and he could always put some decent numbers up, but it's I think it's just a little bit too expensive at that sort of a salary. Shooting guards, small forwards. Bob Cove is at 5,100. Look, he's been a little bit down. He did have a big one in the last game, 32 points, but a few real stinkers before that. I do like him in tournaments, Bob Cove, but not really reliable in cash. While Wigo's at 6,900. He's been putting up okay numbers, but 6,900 just feels too high. Now, he does have a very good record against Philadelphia, so it is something that you can consider. Hate him on DraftKings at 7,200. I won't be looking at him at that price over there, but on FanDuel at 6,900, I do think that there is a chance that he gets to 40, but it's not a high one, so that's why I would look at him in GPPs only. Power forwards, Gorgie Jeng continues to be underpriced to me. Averaging 29 across the last 3. He's at 5,600. You should feel pretty comfortable about him getting that salary back in terms of value. He's 57 on DraftKings, so I think he's a decent play over there, but he's a better play over on FanDuel. Well, Dario Saric at 4,200, actually pretty quietly, I guess, averaging 27 points over the last 3. The matchup is somewhat of a negative, but at that price, at 4,200 on both sites, the ability for him to get to 30, especially if they decide not to go Twin Towers again, the Sixers, which is what everything looks like it's pointing towards, you might get 24, 25 out of Saric, and it could work. Definitely no ability to use him in cash games, though. Ersan Ilyasova at 6,100. Well, we don't know what they're doing in terms of Twin Towering stuff at the moment. He's averaging 33 over the last 3. That's obviously fantastic, but will he play 28 minutes? Will he play 22 minutes? We don't know. So he could be in use. I like him a bit better on DraftKings at 5,300, so a much cheaper price over there, but the same risks are still involved. Nerlens Noel, Nemanja Bjelica, no thanks. Centers, Joel Embiid at 7,200 on FanDuel and 7,500 on DraftKings. I think he's a really good play on both of those. He struggled the last time that he matched up against Karl Anthony Towns. I think he'll be looking for a better performance than he had there. He only had the 22 minutes and had 22 points. At 7,200, he's averaging 39 points across the last 5 games. I feel pretty confident that he's going to be able to return you at least 35 points worth of value here, so I do like him. Karl Anthony Towns I also like. He's at 9,300. I feel pretty good about getting 40, 45 even out of Karl Towns. It's a really good matchup as well. Big men have been able to put up some pretty good numbers against the Sixers this year, so Towns is He's someone to look at. He's at 9,900 on DraftKings, and that's still a usable price over there as well. Won't be looking at Okafor or Cole Aldrich, either as the other centers who are on the roster. Let's move into the next game, and that is Utah and Boston. No spread out yet because there's lots of injury situations. We've got Tyler Zeller, Avery Bradley, and Marcus Smart, who are all ill. A few of these Celtics players have been in hospital. We don't know if they're going to be out of hospital. Obviously, if they're still in hospital by the time the game starts, they won't be playing. We've got, for the Utah side, Georgie Hill, who's questionable with a concussion, and Dante Exum with his knee. Not that Exum has too much of an impact, but yeah, obviously a lot of situations to take a peek at. If we assume, I'll go through this assuming all these guys are playing, but obviously if you're a Basketball Monster member, you can see the impact of injuries, or if Smart misses or if Bradley misses, which are probably the two biggest ones. If both Smart and Bradley miss, we're really looking at a lot of Terry Rozier in that situation, and even some Gerald Green as a GPP type option, where obviously with Utah, if Georgie Hill is out, it comes down to Shelvin Mack again. Let's talk point guards now. And to be honest, there's not a lot to love in this game, just with Utah's general slow pace and the way that the salaries are structured. There's not a lot of standout value, assuming that everyone plays. Not a lot to really love it in that sort of a situation. That's on FanDuel. On DraftKings, it's a little bit of a different story. Georgie Hill's at 6,200. I wouldn't want to be using him at that price, while Isaiah Thomas is at 8,100. Obviously been killing it lately, dropped 54 in the last game, but Utah's a different story. Can he get to 40 points against Utah? It feels like somewhat of a stretch, but I wouldn't put it past Thomas, and that's why I look at him as a GPP guy that you can definitely use and feel okay about in that sort of a format. In cash, it's somewhat risky with so many other guys out there. Marcus Smart at 4,600. If Avery Bradley is out, I would look at Marcus Smart at that price, but if Bradley is in, then it is tough. He's at 4,400 on DraftKings, and the same sort of story applies to him over there. As for Avery Bradley at 6,500, I wouldn't want to use that, even if he does play. Obviously, I wouldn't use it if he doesn't play. Small forwards, Jay Crowder, 5,000 on FanDuel. It just continually looks appealing, but it never really is when you dig onto the surface. He's only averaging 22 over the last 5 and 24 over the last 3. A real negative matchup for him as well. I think he's a fade on FanDuel. At 4,900 on DraftKings is a little bit better, but it's not it's not a fantastic matchup for him over there either. The matchup's still bad, but he's a little bit more valuable on DraftKings. Still don't think he's a great option on either of those two sites. Gordy Hayward at $8,000 on FanDuel. Probably feels a little bit expensive given the way that he's been going well. Make no doubt, he had 43 points today, but 8,000 is a relatively expensive amount. He's 8,000 on DraftKings, but the scoring system just suits him a little bit better. Not sure I really trust him in cash, but definitely as a GPP guy who can get 45, can get even 50 at $8,000. That can be useful. Say you don't want to take on a guy like Kawhi Leonard, who is that similar $8,000 priced small forward. Joey Ingles, Joe Johnson, Jaylen Brown, not going to be much use for those guys. Amir Johnson at 4,000, that's a real tough one to get behind, as is Derek Favors at 4,800, especially given that it is a back-to-back game and we saw him get limited today. Even if he is limited, Trey Lyles and Boris Diaw aren't really appealing options. At center, 7,200 for Al Horford, you can forget about that in my opinion, but on DraftKings he's at 6,200, so the discrepancy there is still large, and he's dropped $500 on DraftKings as well, so I can totally understand using him on DraftKings, except that he's playing Rudy Gobert. So that is a real negative situation. So I would be really reluctant in cash games to have a look at Horford there, but I could understand having a look into GPP, but even in FanDuel, I don't reckon it's an awesome play. 7,500 for Gobert. He's coming off some pretty big games. Another 43 today. Absolutely, he can be used, I think, on both sites. He has value on both of those. Let's move on now to the next game. Where are we? And that is the Indiana Pacers and the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons are favored by 4, and the total here is 203. Aaron Baines sprained his ankle in the last game, so he is questionable. Probably more importantly, Jeffy Teague, who sprained his ankle in the last game, is also questionable. Now, he finished out the game, but as is so often the case with ankle injuries, once you leave the game, take your boot off, the adrenaline dies down, the swelling comes up, and it can become quite hard to walk around. So we might not be seeing Teague. If Teague is out, we're going to see a lot of Aaron Brooks and maybe even some extra Monte Ellis. But I would imagine that we see probably Brooks, and he would become a GPP DFS type of player. At point guard here, we've got Reg Jackson at 6,100. He's averaging 33 across the last three. The matchup is a marginal negative, but not really. It's basically about even. So I do think that he is a solid play there with maybe not too much upside, but a fairly decent floor. Whereas Teague at 7,900 with a bum ankle, I wouldn't want to be spending that on him despite the matchup being a positive one for him over on FanDuel. If we have a look at how it all runs over on DraftKings, he's a bit of a better option there at 7,100, but again, the ankle just does worry me that even if he does play, he won't be 100%. But 3,000 on Aaron Brooks if Teague is out is obviously a very impressive one to take, or very important one to take a look at. Shooting guards, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, 5,700. He dropped 40 in the last game. He is a fluky guy, he's a streaky guy, he's probably just a tournament type of player to me, but he obviously has the ability to go for 35 plus and do it relatively regularly without being able to rely on him. You can use him in tournaments and have a fair degree of confidence that he'll at least get close to that and then have a real chance to go above that. Monte Ellis, look, $4,000, it's not happening unless Teague is out, and then they might run with him, but I really don't see them doing it, to be honest. Small forward Marcus Morris, 4,300, just been putrid lately, averaging just the 18 points in the last 5 games. I can't really see a reasoning for me to get behind Marcus Morris, so I won't. Little dog Glenn Robinson III, not Frank Vogel, stuck in last season. Nate McMillan said that he's going to stick with Glenn Robinson III in the starting lineup. Now, it doesn't mean much, but he's at 3,700 and 3,600 on DraftKings, and over the last 3 games, if we look at what he does on DraftKings, he's averaging 19 points in the last 3, which at 3,600, actually not bad. He had 20 in the last game. So you could take a punt on him. Maybe he plays 28 minutes, especially if Teague's out, and gets 30 points. And at $3,000 or $3,600, it's repaid itself pretty conveniently, and I don't imagine his ownership would be all that high. Paulie George at 7,800. Shit matchup, average player of late. Can't see myself really using him, nor CJ Miles or Stan Johnson. Power forward Johnny Lua has struggled in his starting role. He's at 4,800. Definitely got tournament upside here, but that's about it. No cash play there. While Thad Young really let everyone down in the last game with just 16 points at 5,200. Can he get better than that? Of course he can. Is he an optimal play? I don't think he's an optimal play. Toby Harris is an interesting one. He's averaging 32 over the last 5 games, 33 actually. The matchup is very positive, but his salary is now at $6,000 on FanDuel, which is a $300 price rise, which does turn me off him. He's at $6,200 on DraftKings, the same story, a price rise there, and that is probably why I'll leave him alone and let someone else grab Toby Harris. At center, Drummond at 7,700, had a 52 in the last game. The salary's gone back up $300. I like him in GPPs. I think there's definite value there. The same on DraftKings. I actually like him on DraftKings in cash a little bit more at 7,300, just that cheaper salary. And against Miles Turner, some of the centers have been able to have some significantly big nights. So I do believe that he is worth a look, and it is a bit of a bump for him as well. So I think that he is absolutely worth a look on both sides. As for Turner at 6,600, has struggled against Detroit in the past, coming off a 45-pointer. The matchup is a negative for him. I reckon this is probably a situation where you fade Miles Turner, and at 6,500 on DraftKings, the same thing goes. Over on that side, if Bainesy happens to be out, Boban Marjanovic will take those minutes, but that doesn't mean that he is going to be a DFS play. Far from it. Washington and Dallas is the next game. No spread release for this one. Darren Williams is questionable with an illness, just another illness across the NBA. If Darren is out, it's time for all the Seth Curry. He's going to be having to play a lot of minutes. You'll get some Pierre Jackson in there as well. I don't think he'll probably play. He might play 18 minutes, but it won't be enough really to be a DFS option. But Seth should get 35, 36 minutes, and that would obviously be important. Johnny Wall at 9,600. This is a slow-paced match. Dallas has been a huge negative to point guards this season. 9,600 for John. There are other options to spend your money on. This is not the optimal scenario for John. Now, he has done well against this team in the past, but you don't need to do well at 9,600. You need to do bloody well, and I'm just not sure he gets to that level. Won't be using Darren, even if he is ready to play. Wouldn't be using Seth Curry if Darren happens to be out at 4,300, but if Darren's in, if Darren's out, Seth, yes. Braddles Beal at 6,800 had 20 20 today. Oh no, he didn't have more than that. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. 6,800 for Braddles. Yeah, solid price. Again, the negative matchup is a little bit of a concern, but I'm not as worried about that one as what I am for the matchup with Wall at point guard. So I think that he is worth a look. Whereas Wes Matthews also suffers a negative matchup going up against the Wizards. He's at 5,600, 26 points average over his last three. At 5,600 is okay, but again, I think that you can probably find a better shooting guard option than Wes Matthews at this point. Any other shooting guards on Marcus Thornton? Nah. Small forwards, Otto Porter, 5,600. Struggled a bit today, obviously. I don't mind that salary. I do think it's worth going back to the well there on Otto Porter and hoping for a 30-pointer. I think he is in play without being the best option, while the pencil Harrison Barnes is at 6,800. Just a nice 30, 31, 32 type guy, but at 6,800, it's just not enough. So to me, on both FanDuel and DraftKings, where he's at 6,700, I don't think that this is really a time to get the pencil into your lineup. Kelly Oubre, Dorian Finney-Smith, unlikely to be of use. Markieff Morris is at 4,900. Projections do think he's an okay play here. I'm a little bit skeptical. I like him in a tournament, but not in a cash game scenario. And Dirk at 5,300, not going to be worth looking at on FanDuel, but on DraftKings at 4,100. If we hear that Dirk is increasing his minutes, then I can totally see getting him and saying, all right, we'll get 24, 25 out of Dirk if he plays 20, 23 minutes, which is a possibility. The matchup for him is somewhat of a positive as well. So I can see Dirk being used as a tournament punt guy, get your 25 out of him at 4,100, and then build the rest of your lineup around him that way. Dwight Powell, probably not. Jason Smith, same story. At centre, Marcin Gortat's going to play a lot of minutes. He's at 6,100. The salary has actually dipped by $500 on FanDuel, and it's coming off a couple of big performances. Really, really happy to use him over there. Same thing on DraftKings. Even though the price is high, the scoring system has been giving him bonuses, and he is averaging 36 points over the last three at 6,500. Totally can get behind using Gortat. Andrew Bogut, no. Let's move into the next game now. We've got the Toronto Raptors and the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs are favoured by 5.5, and the total is 211 points here. Patrick Patterson is questionable. He missed the last game. They said that he was missing that one just precautionary, so he should be back for this one. If Pat happens to miss, it gives more minutes to Jonas Valanciunas and more minutes to Pascal Siakam. And you could consider using JV in that matchup if Patterson happens to be out. Let's talk point guards here. Kyle Lowry is at $8,000. He's obviously been fantastic. He's averaging 50 over the last three, 48 over the last five. But the Spurs, for a point guard like him, are actually not a great matchup in terms of fantasy points. I do love that his salary has dropped by $1,100 though, so that's a real improvement over on FanDuel, and that does make him somewhat appealing. But to me, he's just a tournament punty sort of a guy on both sides. He's at 8,400 on DraftKings, and he's averaging 55 over the last three. But the price is high. The matchup is not good, so there's something of a concern there for me that I would leave him for GPPs only. Tone Parker dropped 34 in the last game. He's at 4,500. Now, it's a negative matchup for Tone as well, going up against Kyle Lowry, but his recent form has been good enough to consider at 4,500. I probably wouldn't do it. I probably wouldn't take the risk on Parker, but looking at his recent form, you can't just 100% exclude him. I would be excluding Pat Mills, who just isn't doing anything really at the moment. He's averaging just 15 points over the last 5 games. Shooting guards, DeMar, 7,900. Yeah, I really like that. It's somewhat of a negative matchup, but if you're spending up at shooting guard, DeMar is the way to go without guys like James Harden on the docket. So he is an option there. He's averaging 41 over the last 5. He just feels fairly consistent at that price. 81 on DraftKings as well. Really a solid play over on that side as well. Dan Green at 38, GPPs only. Manu, Norm Powell. Yeah, Manu, maybe. But he's at 4,100, but he's averaging 26 across the last 3. Really tough to use Manu, though, in a DFS-type situation. Small forwards, Kawhi is at 8,300. Hasn't really been returning the exact value we want, but I do think that he's in a decent spot here. The Raptors are marginally negative for small forwards, but I do think that 8,300 for Kawhi is comfortably achievable. He's at 84 on DraftKings, so that worries me off 85 on DraftKings. That worries me off a little bit more over there, and I'd probably only consider him a tournament guy, and that's about it. But a preferable option on FanDuel. Damari Carroll's minimum salary, and even that is not going to get it done for me, while Teza Ross at 4,000 is averaging 25 on FanDuel in the last 3 games and 27 on DraftKings. So some decent numbers, but really just a GPP type of player to me. Power forward Pat wouldn't use him anyway, even if he played. Dave Lee, no. LaMarcus Aldridge up to 7,900 on FanDuel, so that's it's a fair chunk. Probably makes him hard to use. He's 7,600 on DraftKings, and the same story. I find him just really difficult to use at that sort of hour. Now he's playing well, no doubt, averaging 40 over the last 5. I just don't have full faith against a Raptors team who's quite good defensively in that position to drop me 40 points. I just don't really feel that's coming. Pau Gasol at 6,500, noted Raptor killer Pau Gasol. Remember that from his time in Chicago, just eviscerated this team. He's at 6,500 and he is absolutely a GPP type of option. 61 on DraftKings. I wouldn't want to trust it in cash, but he has got a real history and they are shit scared of playing him because he just kicks their ass almost every time. So that is something to really, like, you don't often pay that attention to that with different teams, but he had such a profound impact on against this team that you have to think that there is some sort of mental leftover from that Power could be able to have a big performance here. Valanciunas is at 5,400 on FanDuel, which is not great, which would be fine if Patterson was out, but if Patterson's in, I don't love it. But over on DraftKings at 4,800, I can get behind him at 4,800, even if Pat happens to play. I think that's a solid price, a solid GPP guy with some upside that if he gets the 28, 30 minutes, that we're looking at potentially 30, 35 even points that he could get, and that could really return some value at that salary. Let's move on to Baba Nogueira's no real use for DFS, I don't believe. Miami and Phoenix. Miami still with the injuries. Dion Waiters and Goran Dragic are both questionable. Hassan Whiteside and Justice Winslow have both already been ruled out of this one, so we've got some clarity early on. Dion Waiters has been practicing and warming up, and Dragic looks like he will come back, so we will assume that both of those guys are ready to go for this one. There is no spread currently out for this one, nor is there any spread for the remaining games we're going to talk about. As for Dragic, against his former team back in Phoenix, he is at $7,000. He's got a very good history against Phoenix. We just obviously need him to play. The matchup's great. The revenge factor's there. This is real revenge factor as well, where he does seem to cut sick against this team. So if he plays, really like it at GPP, and I think he'd be pretty low owned just because, or depending, I guess, on when the news comes out. If it comes out at, say, midday, then his ownership will be fine. If it comes out at 6 p.m., then that he's in, then I reckon you have a look at him, and I think he's got some big GPP upside, maybe 40, 45 point type situation, just given all the things that are going on in Miami without Justice Winslow there as well. As for Bledsoe at 7,900, coming off a big one today where he had 47 points. A really bad matchup though. Miami is a real detriment to opposition point guard performances. Bledsoe has suffered that wrath over the past as well. So not happening there for me. Tyler Johnson, if Dragic is out at 5,900. Hate the price on FanDuel. Really not a fan of $5,900 for Tyler Johnson. He's at 57 on DraftKings, so I could definitely get behind it on DraftKings if Dragic is out, but not even really sure on FanDuel that if Dragic misses that he is necessarily a must-play sort of a guy. Shooting guard Devin Booker is at 6,000. Stinker today, just the 18 points, but he has been putting up some solid numbers, but 6,000 just feels like it might be a little bit much. Same thing on DraftKings, where 6,300 feels definitely like it's too much. Joshy Richardson's killing it, averaging 36 over the last 3. He's at 5,900. That's a $400 price rise on FanDuel, and he's at 6,000 on DraftKings. So those salaries are making him very, very tough to use. But if Dragic is out, I would look at it in a GPP, but I reckon he'd be a tough guy to consider in cash, and I probably even would fade him in GPPs, to be honest. I wouldn't want to use Dion Waiters in his first game back from an extended groin layoff, and Wayne Ellington is always just a GPP option if both of those guards happen to be out. Small forwards, PJ Tucker's at 3,800. Had 24 today, which at 3,800 absolutely works. But he's obviously a little bit of a risky guy to take a look at. On DraftKings, he's at 3,700, so the same sort of story over there. I'd look at him maybe in a tournament, but even then, how appealing is his upside? The answer is not very. TJ Warren's at 49, so I really like that. Dropped 39 today, $4,900 is not an expensive salary. He's at $5,000 on DraftKings. He is good to go for me on both of those sites. No other small forwards to talk about, so let's talk power forwards. Alex Len is at $4,100, had 20 points today. He's averaging 15 over the last 5. But this matchup, I think he's just a real out of the blue type, cheeky sort of guy to take a punt on and hope that some stuff goes big, because I think there's an opportunity for him here against Miami without Hassan Whiteside in the lineup. Marquise Chris, Udonis Haslam, Bender, Babbitt, Williams, really hard to get a read on any of those guys. Tyson Chandler at $4,800, not happening for me. That's just $500-$600 too expensive, same as the $4,600 he is on DraftKings, where it's not bad, but I still prefer to go in a different direction. And Will Reed, who will start most likely in Hassan Whiteside's absence, he put up 11 points in that last game, so didn't play much because James Johnson, who I should have talked about earlier, he gets a lot of those minutes at centre. At $5,400 for James Johnson, absolutely love using him on both sides. He's at 55 on DraftKings. He dropped 38 in the last game, and should get another opportunity with Whiteside out to put up some significant numbers, playing a lot of minutes at the centre position. All right, we've got 2 games to go now, so let's get stuck into the second last one of those now, and that is the Sacramento Kings and the Denver Nuggets. As I mentioned before, no spread is available here, but we've got some injuries. Obviously, Ken Fareed and Darrell Arthur are both questionable with Denver, and Sacramento, we've got Rudy Gay and Ty Lawson, who are also both questionable. At point guard, really, look, if Lawson's out, we look at Darren Collison, and we say $4,100 for Collison. Hard to rely upon him, but if he gets 39 minutes, which he played in the last one, he put up 24 points. Very hard to go past that, because that is obviously a good return on investment. He's at $4,500 on DraftKings, the same story, but only if Lawson's out. If Lawson plays, really tough to use either of those guys. The Denver point guards, well, it's a good matchup for them, taking on the Kings. $5,000 for Manny Mudiay. He's obviously got the ability to go big. He is strictly a GPP guy, but I do like his GPP upside here. Jameer Nelson, no. Jamal Murray, no. Shooting guards, Gaz Harris at 47. Like the matchup for him. I don't like him in cash, but I do think that he at sub 5,000, he is worth it on both sites in tournaments. A pretty solid tournament upside sort of guy to get you 27, 28 points even at 47, and have the ability to go much bigger than that as well. Farton Will Barton at $5,200, not really interested in him at that salary, nor with Garrett Temple, Ben McLemore, or Malachi Richardson, who should see himself in the rotation more. Wilson Chandler at $5,600 had a monster today, 32 points. I think we should be looking at another 30-ish type night from him, so I do really like him on both sites, where he's at $5,600 on both of them, with a real ability to go above 30 points here, so this is a good spot for him. And the Roosters at $6,200 on FanDuel and $59 on DraftKings. I like him on both of those sites there as well, so I think you can use both Chandler and Gallinari in this matchup. Rudy Gay, we don't know if he will start or not. If he is out, Anthony Tolliver likely gets the bump at $3,600 and he becomes a GPP option. Matty Barnes also comes into calculations at $3,800. He dropped 33 in the last game when Gay was out, and has been consistently inconsistent is the best way of saying that. Nick Jokic, 7,200, really, really good matchup for him. Can he stay out of foul trouble? Well, he's got Boogie, so that's a real worry for him here. You feel like he's going to eclipse value even in limited minutes. He's averaging 41 in 27 minutes across the last 3 games. But the Boogie matchup is a concern, so I would be careful about using Jokic here. As much as I love him, this is a real foul drawing opportunity for him. And we know how well he's fared in those situations. At centre, Yusuf Nurkic at minimum salary, definitely worth a punt, because he might find himself in 25 minutes because Jokic is in real trouble. So he would be an interesting punt guy. Whereas Boogie Cousins at 11,200, this has got the makings of 60 written all over it for Boogie. He's 11-4 on DraftKings. Really hard to go past him on both of those sites. Do like him a lot here, with a real potential for an absolute monster. The last game of the night is the Memphis Grizzlies and the Los Angeles Lakers. Marc Gasol is questionable with his ankle sprain, and for the Lakers, Tariq Black is probable with his ankle problem. For this one, I've assumed that Gasol is out. I just don't think that Gasol will play in the first game of a back-to-back with his ankle. So the values and the comments that I'm giving you here are based on the assumption that Gasol is not playing. Let's talk point guards first. Mike Conley is at $7,000. Good matchup, definitely a good matchup taking on the Lakers. and love it at 6,500 over on DraftKings. On FanDuel, not 100% a fan of it. He did have 36 in the last game in just 29 minutes. And if Gasol's not there, yeah, his usage obviously bumps, and maybe he gets a couple of extra minutes. So I do like him in that sort of a scenario. So yeah, obviously worth a look if we hear that Gasol is out, especially on DraftKings. D'Angelo Russell at $6,000, had 42 in the last game, so obviously repaid that. But the Memphis matchup is not a very positive one. But the last game that he did it against the Raptors was not a positive one for him either, and he put up good numbers. Love him on DraftKings at 5,400. Really love that salary, and would attack that. 6,000 on FanDuel, not necessarily as much. Tone Allen at 46. With Gasol is out, then I do really like Allen at that price. I think he's got 30-point upside there. Lou Williams is not someone that I'm interested in. He has been really, really struggling. And then you get the defensive issue of Tone Allen. Uncle P, Nick Young, he's at 4,700, so the salary's up. He did have 30 in the last game, but I'm just not confident of Nick Young getting me 25 points in a matchup. So I would look at him as a DFS guy who's obviously got high upside, but really not a great deal of consistency. Luol Deng's been putrid after a really strong stretch. He's at 4,500, still getting the minutes. So that's something you have to pay some attention to. But given the fact that he had 8 points in 30 minutes in the last game and it's averaging under 15 in the last 3 in 32 minutes, it's not really encouraging. 4,500 though, he puts him in GPP consideration. Chandler Parsons, James Ennis, Vince Carter, Brandon Ingram, none of those guys should really be too much you shouldn't be paying too much attention there. Power forwards is where it's at though, because if Gasol is out, JaMychal Green at 5,100 becomes pretty much a must play, and Zebo at 5,900 will likely start at center, and he becomes a must play almost as well. So love both of those guys on both sites, on both DraftKings and FanDuel, if Gasol happens to be out. Jarrell Martin gets somewhat of a bump, but he's a minimum salary guy, and I don't really think that he's going to be turning heads. Julius Randle's at 6,700. If Gasol plays, I don't love it. If Gasol is out, I would take a punt on Randle in a GPP. I think that he'd have more room to move there. Obviously, he's coming off a really good 43-point performance, so he would be useful. But if Gasol plays, it really limits his usefulness, in my opinion. And the centers, Tim Mozgov, Tariq Black, nothing to really see there. All right, let's now look at the picks of the day. Now, starting with FanDuel. TJ McConnell, 46, Reg Jackson, 61, and Kyle Lowry, 8,000. At shooting guard, Gaz Harris, 47, DeMar DeRozan, 79. The small forwards, TJ Warren, 49, Wilson Chandler, 56, and Kawhi at 83. Power forwards, Dario Saric, 42, Gorgie Jeng, 56, and the centers. The process, Joel Embiid, 72, and Karl Towns at 93. On DraftKings, TJ McConnell, 43, D'Angelo Russell, 54, and Kyle Lowry, 84. The shooting guards, Gaz Harris, 47, Braddles Beal, 66, and DeMar DeRozan, 81. Small forwards, Little Dog, Glenn Robinson III, 36, The Rooster, 59, and Gordon Hayward, 8,000. Power forwards, Dario Saric, 42, Wilson Chandler, 56, and Karl Towns, 9900. And the centers, Jonas Valanciunas, 48, The Process at 7,500, and DeMarcus Cousins at 11,400. On the Aussie sides, Moneyball, TJ McConnell, 38, Russell, D'Angelo, 5,100, and Kyle Lowry, 85. Shooting guards, Gaz Harris, 35, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, 53, and DeRozan, 82. Small forwards, Crowder, 45, The Rooster, 55, and Leonard, 82. Power forwards, Dirk, minimum salary Dirk. I think you got to look at him there. Nick Jokic at 64, definitely a tournament guy at that price, and centers, Tyson Chandler, 4,000, love that low price. The Process, 6,100, and Karl Towns, 9,200. On Draft Stars, TJ McConnell, 6,050, Reggie Jackson, 9,200, and Isaiah Thomas, 14,050. Shooting guard, Joshy Rich, 7,650, Devin Booker, 97, and Kawhi at 15,550. The small forwards, Little Dog at 5,000, Wilson Chandler at 10,450, and Gordy Hayward, 14,900. Power forwards, Jimmy Johnson, 6,950, The Rooster at 10,900, and Boogie at 19,700, and at centre, Will Reed at 5,000. It's a punt option, clearly. Joel Embiid, 13,750, and Karl Towns, 18,000. We are done here, guys. Follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Gerald Green.